This is a continuation where we're picking up in the chapter Calculation of Time by the Atom. And what Maitreya was doing previously in the very beginning of the chapter was describing how Brahma had different divisions of creation. He created the immovable living entities, plants, different things like that. And there was descriptions of the four-legged animals and different features of them, the aquatics. Basically, it's an overview of the different types of bodies that were created in the entire universe. Then Maitreya kind of changed directions a little bit after describing the setting of the entire universe. You may remember, if you go back further, there's all the elements, there's all the planets, there's the 14 planetary systems. Now there's the bodies for their inhabitation. And it's kind of like a whole setup for what's going to take place when they inhabit their bodies and start to function. So now he's going to talk about that population from the point of view of human beings as descendants of Manu. If you're not speaking, please remember to mute. Thank you. So he's starting from that point of view, and the context in which he wants to be able to have a thematic cohesion means that you have to have past, present, and future. So time itself is where he's going to start his detailed explanation. And that's where we'll pick up here. So I want to go to the text and kind of explain that framework from which he's going to progress. So this is the April 2022 lessons 1 and 2, but I do have a review from the previous chapter and from our previous study. It's from Canto, oh, it should be Canto 3. Text 10, chapter 11. Maitreya said, this was in the previous chapter speaking with Vidura. Eternal time is the primeval source of the interactions of the three modes of material nature. It is unchangeable and limitless, and it works as the instrument of the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his pastimes in the material creation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The impersonal time factor is the background of the material manifestation as the instrument of the Supreme Lord. It is the ingredient of assistance offered to material nature. So this means that the Lord has designed that along with the elements of material nature, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and the modes of material nature, sattva, rajas, and tamas, the interaction of all those, the ingredient of assistant is time. No one knows where time began or where it ends. And it is time only which can keep a record of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material manifestation. This time factor is the material cause of creation and is therefore a self-expansion of the personality of Godhead. Time is considered the impersonal feature of the Lord. So this gives us a framework by which to understand the importance of time in the material world. It's a whole background. It's like the skeleton in a body. Without the skeleton, it would just collapse into mush. So the body is supported by that structure. Similarly, the entire universe is supported by the structure of time. So with that introduction, Samapriya, why don't you choose the readers and we'll go into Maitreya's further descriptions of time.
Okay, thank you and welcome everyone. And thank you, Manvantara, for that profound statement before. And now, why don't you start reading for us, Manvantarji?
Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 11, Text 16. Vidura said, I now understand the life durations of the residents of the Pita planets and heavenly planets, as well as that of the human beings. Now kindly inform me of the durations of life of those greatly learned living entities who are beyond the range of a kalpa. Purport. The partial dissolution of the universe that takes place at the end of Brahma's day does not affect all the planetary systems. The planets of highly learned living entities, like the sages Sanaka and Brigu, are not affected by the dissolutions of the millenniums. All the planets are of different types, and each is controlled by a different kalpa chakra, or schedule of eternal time. The time of the Earth planet is not applicable to others, more elevated planets. Therefore, Vidura herein inquires about the duration of life on other planets.
Thank you, Mamatar. Why don't you go on reading the next one?
Text 17. O spiritually powerful one, you can understand the movements of eternal time, which is the controlling form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because you are a self-realized person, you can see everything by the power of mystic vision. Purport. Those who have reached the highest perfectional stage of mystic power and can see everything in the past, present, and future are called Trikalpa Gyan. Similarly, the devotees of the Lord can see everything clearly that is in the revealed scriptures. The devotees of Lord Sri Krishna can very easily understand the science of Krishna, as well as the situation of the material and spiritual creations without difficulty. Devotees do not have to endeavor for yoga siddhi or perfection in mystic powers. They are competent to understand everything by the grace of the Lord, who is sitting in everyone's heart.
I have one question for you, Mamatar.
Mhm.
Are we understanding everything very simply about this time factor?
No, but by the grace of the Lord.
Okay, so even if we're not understanding, it's the existence of this knowledge is not dependent upon our understanding, but we can develop faith. We can have faith, and that's dependent upon the person you're hearing from, to have faith in that person. So these things will become revealed, and if not, they're not fully revealed, a devotee is satisfied hearing, accepting the truth from the self-realized soul. That's how I
agree.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
One thing important to understand is that a pure devotee, a self-realized soul, an actual person beyond this material world, very clearly and easily sees past, present, and future.
Right. Right.
So therefore, Vidura has that faith, Maitreya has that knowledge, and now he'll explain it.
And also Prabhupada, he's giving the purports, so he has it also. It's amazing. It was amazing. Thank you. Let's go on with Vaishnavi. Can you read?
Yes. So Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.11.18, Maitreya said, O Vidura, the 4 millenniums are called the Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga. The aggregate number of years of all these combined is equal to 12,000 years of the demigods. Purport. The years of the demigods are equal to 360 years of mankind. As will be clarified in subsequent verses, 12,000 of the demigods' years, including the transitional periods which are called Yuga Sandhyas, comprise the total of the aforementioned 4 millenniums. Thus, the aggregate of the above mentioned 4 millenniums is 432 followed by 4 zeros.
4,320,000. Go on reading.
So the 3.1119, the duration of the Satya millennium equals 4,800 years of the demigods. The duration of the Treta millennium equals 3,600 years of the demigods. The duration of the Dwapara millennium equals 2,400 years. And that of the Kali millennium is 1,200 years of the demigods. Purport. As aforementioned, 1 year of the demigod is equal to 360 years of the human beings. The duration of Satya Yuga is therefore 4,800 times 360 or 1,728,000 years. The duration of the Treta Yuga is 3,600 times 360 or 1,296,000 years. The duration of the Dwapara Yuga is 2,400 times 360 or 864,000 years. And the last Kali Yuga is 1,200 times 360 or 432,000 years.
So what is that? What is that? How does that strike you?
That we are insignificant. We are like cicadas having 17 days of life.
Okay, so we are very, very insignificant, and so are our problems. And Prabhupada said also that we should take full advantage of this human form of life. You know, we have it we think it's long, but it's just like a speck. And within this human form of life, we can achieve the absolute truth. We can go back to Godhead, actually, and end the cycle of birth and death. Thank you, Vaishnavi. You don't have anything. Well, that was a pretty clear realization, actually, that we are very small and insignificant. Although it hurts me to say it. I thought it was big, you know? All right. Vajra, why don't you go on reading for us? Thank you, Vaishnavi. Unmute, Vajra.
Danvat everybody, Hare Krishna, Danvat. 3:11, 22 and 21. The transitional period before and after every millennium, which are a few hundred years as aforementioned, are known as Yuga Sandhyas, or the conjunction of two millenniums, according to the expert astronomers. In those periods, all kinds of religious activities are performed, O Vidura. In the Satya millennium, mankind properly and completely maintain the principles of religion. But in other millenniums, religion gradually decreased by one part as irreligion was proportionately admitted. Purport. In the Satya millennium, complete execution of religious principles prevailed. Gradually, the principles of religion decreased by one part in each of the subsequent millenniums. In other words, at present, there is one part religion, not very happy.
What happened?
I don't know
He
what happened.
he cut out for a minute. Yeah, we just couldn't hear you, Bhadra. The point was, in other words, at the present, there's one part religion and three parts irreligion. Therefore, the people in this age are not very happy.
I'm not very happy. Okay.
In the context of time being described by Maitreya, what is the significance of this knowledge? For us, how is it relevant?
Oh, good question.
Go ahead, Bhadra.
Well,
Come on.
well, in a sense that just like there are four pillars of the religion, right? So in Satya Yuga, all the four pillars are there. What is it? It is cleanliness and the truthfulness and the mercy, and what is the fourth one? Anyhow, the four
Did you say
pillars
cleanliness?
are there.
Huh.
Yeah,
Austerity.
cleanliness, austerity, right. So in the when it came to Treta Yuga, then only 3 pillars are there. And in the Dwapar Yuga, there are 2. And in Kali Yuga, we are in the age where there is only 1 pillar, is that which is the truthfulness. And the truthfulness is also gradually gone down. So there is practically no religion. Considering.
And
Well,
consequently, what's the last verse? What's the last sentence say that it consequently in this age, people are not happy. So we can see from my point of view, it reveals how the Vedas actually give enlightenment, just like Manvantara was saying, they restructure our understanding of what's happening. People have all kinds of methods, prescriptions, literally, to try and become freed from their anxiety and difficulties. They have drugs, they have all kinds of material facilities that they're trying to adjust in order to find happiness. They have science. There's one lady that's like written a book on she's a PhD on how to be happy. Different structures that you can do. Attempt that method. But basically the Vedas are revealing that when society at large is irreligious, then nature's concomitant reaction is that there's not happiness. There's distress and anxiety and disturbance. So it's very easy to see why this is happening, and it helps us in context understand what's going on.
Also, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So also, we conditioned souls are very expert at manipulating the material energy to find the happiness, right? So that's when you become a devotee, you finally have realized to some extent that it doesn't work. Because whenever you manipulate something, another problem arises, just like the balloon. If you squeeze the balloon, then it'll pop out in one place or in another place. So basically, we can't win in the battle with the material energy, but we do have a friend, and we're counting on that. Okay, shall we go on? Oh, Bhadra, why don't you continue reading? Unmute, Bhadraji.
Yeah. Outside the 3 planetary systems, Svarga, Martya, and Patal, the 4 yugas multiplied by 1000 comprise 1 day on the planet of Brahma. A similar period comprises a night of the Brahma, in which the creator of the universe goes to sleep. Purport. When Brahma goes to sleep in his night time, the 3 planetary systems below Brahmaloka are all submerged in the water of devastation. In a sleeping condition, Brahma dreams about the Garbhodaksha Vishnu and takes instruction from the Lord for the rehabilitation of the devastated area of space.
So during the nighttime of Brahma, you see here, there's Satyaloka, which is Lord Brahma's abode, Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Maharloka. This area at the top of the universe is where this description is describing, outside the 3 planetary systems, Swarga, Martya, and Patala. So from Swargaloka down, this is the upper planetary systems, the heavenly planets, Swargaloka. Borloka is the middle planetary systems in the lotus, the stem, and all these are the lower planetary systems at the bottom of the lotus. So up this stem is where all the planets are situated, but right up near the top, from Maharloka up, this is not destroyed. Everything else down below is destroyed during every single night of Brahma.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Madhurya, would you read? Thank you, Patti, for that explanation.
Haribol. Okay, Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:11, 23 to 24. At the end of Brahma's night, the creation of the 3 worlds begins again in the daytime of Brahma. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
And they continue to exist through the durations of 14 consecutive Manus, or fathers of mankind. Each and every Manu enjoys a life of a little more than 71 sets of 4 millenniums.
Okay, now you get this. Can you explain this?
Well, it just shows how insignificant we are. You know, that the time of Brahma, although it's like a second or, you know, just a moment in Krishna's life, but compared to ours, it's huge. But we are, you know, if you look at, we're way down there. We're just minute, very, very small amount of time.
Okay, then there's the next one. Do you want to go on with the explanation?
Actually, Brahma wants to Bhadra wants to say something, and I want to explain this.
Okay,
further.
Bhadraji.
I have just a question. Now, this is just in this universe, is that right?
Yes, but every single universe has the same structure, just like everybody's body has the same bones. There's the same amount of bones in every human being, unless there's a deformity. So in the same way, this is a time structure. Just like there's earth, water, fire, air, and ether throughout the entire universe, all the universes have those same elements, but they're all individually constructed.
So all the universes also has all these planets, Earth,
Yes.
planet, everything?
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Oh, I have a question. All the universes have the exact same replica planets? Actually, I don't think so, because there's universes with Brahmas who have more than 4 heads. So that must account for something.
Yes, but they're just bigger. It's the same thing. It's like the body of an elephant and the body of a baby elephant, or you know, there's big and there's small, but they're made of the same ingredients.
So they
So
would have
these time factors is what's being described.
I see. The time factor.
Let's go through it. The life of Brahma is the life of the universe. He has different days, just like we have different days. He has 36,000. There's 360 days in a year, according to this calculation. Must be that way rather than 365. So 360 times 100 equals 36,000 days. This is a kalpa, a day of kalpa. A day of Brahma, I'm sorry. Within that day of Brahma, there are always 14 manvantars and 15 sandhyas. A sandhya is a intermediate time period, like when Hiranyakasipu was killed. It wasn't day and it wasn't night. It was in between the two. So you can see that there's a partial devastation every single night and a partial devastation here. So there's a creation after that. There's a creation at the beginning of every single day, and there's a devastation at every night in those that was previously described in all the planetary systems other than those at the very top of the universe. Within a kalpa, there are 14 manvantars. The life of a manvantara is here, 71 divya yugas. A divya yuga is a congregate of Satya, Treta, Dwarpa, and Kali all together. That's a divya yuga. So manvantara, a manvantara's time period, a manu's reign over mankind in the universe, is 71 of those. And we see here, this is the sandhya times. In between, these are also sandhyas at the beginning of Satya Yuga, at the end of Satya Yuga, at the beginning of Treta Yuga, at the end of Treta Yuga, at the beginning of Dwarpa Yuga, at the end of Dwarpa Yuga, at the beginning of Kali Yuga, and at the end of Kali Yuga. So we're here at the beginning of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga lasts 432,000 years, 5,000 years of which have passed. I think it was 16,000 years is the Sandhya, if I'm not mistaken. So we're a third into the Sandhya of the actual Kali Yuga. So that's how bad it's going to get later on. But basically this shows, just like we have seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, decades, centuries, this is the same thing expanded to the life of Brahma. And this is what's being described.
Okay, that's very, very profound, actually.
And basically, he's still talking more or less about the life of Brahma and his days.
Madhurya, would you want to continue reading?
Sure. So this is 3:11, 25 to 27. After the end of Brahma's night, the creation of the three worlds begins again in the daytime of Brahma, and they continue to exist through the life durations of 14 consecutive manus, or fathers of mankind. In the creation during Brahma's day, the three planetary systems, Svarga, Martya, and Patala, revolve, and the inhabitants, including the lower animals, human beings, demigods, and pitas, appear and disappear in terms of their fruitive activities. In each and every change of Manu, the Supreme Personality Godhead appears by manifesting his internal potency in different incarnations as Manu and others. Thus he maintains the universe by discovered power.
Thank you. Tisha, would you like to read the next one?
Yes.
Now there's a transition. There's a reason for the transition.
Okay.
Okay, you read this.
Thank you. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:11-28. At the end of the day, under the insignificant portion of the mode of darkness, the powerful manifestation of the universe merges in the darkness of night. By the influence of eternal time, the innumerable living entities remain merged in that dissolution, and everything is silent. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse is an explanation of the night of Brahma, which is the effect of the influence of time in touch with an insignificant portion of the modes of material nature in darkness. The dissolution of the three worlds is affected by the incarnation of darkness, Rudra, represented by the fire of eternal time, which blazes over the three worlds. These three worlds are known as Bhu, Bhuva, and Swa, Patala, Martya, and Svarga. The innumerable living entities merge into that dissolution, which appears to be the dropping of the curtain of the scene of the Supreme Lord's energy, and so everything becomes silent.
Want to read the next one too?
Yes, thank you. 3:11-29. When the night of Brahma ensues, all the three worlds are out of sight, and the sun and the moon are without glare, just as in the due course of an ordinary night. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is understood that the glare of the sun and moon disappear from the sphere of the three worlds, but the sun and the moon themselves do not vanish. They appear in the remaining portion of the universe, which is beyond the sphere of the three worlds. The portion in dissolution remains without sun rays or moon glow. It all remains dark and full of water, and there are indefatigable winds? Indefatigable winds, as explained in the following verses.
Oh boy. So does Bhaja has a question, because everyone has to understand what's going on now. This is Lord Brahma's creation. And Bhaja, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Dhruv Maharaj Prabhu, can you explain this little bit, please?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Let me get back to the screen. Oops. Okay. During Brahma's night, when he goes to sleep, everything from here down in this entire part of the universe, we'll read about now. What happens is that down here, Lord Ananta, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, lying in the bottom of the ocean, in the bottom of the universe, from whose navel this all came from, emanates a fire and water, and the water fills up all this part of the universe. During that time, it was just described during the night of Brahma, even the sun and the moon can't be seen. Everything here is darkness, but from Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Swargaloka, due to their piety, these living entities don't have to undergo such inconvenience. And it even says here that they appear, the sun and moon, in the remaining portion of the universe, which is beyond the sphere of the three worlds. The portion of disillusion remains without sun rays or moon glow. It all remains dark and full of water. And there are indefatigable winds. So this part here, it's all dark, horrible, windy, and the living entities, I guess they merge back into, I don't know, maybe we'll read it now, but they might merge into the Lord himself. And then at the beginning of Brahma's day, which is a new kalpa, this whole thing starts again. We're actually reading now the beginning of a kalpa, because Vishnu was explaining to Brahma, as you've done it before, you will do it again. So there are two types of creations of Brahma. One is the beginning of the very universe, and two is at the beginning of every day, he creates this entire part again. Is that clear? Any
Yes,
other?
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So what about the demigods part?
Demigods also disillusion. They're covered up.
I see.
So
But then the sun and
pardon?
But what about the sun and moon? Then?
Sun and
Oh,
moon.
Sesha-
Sun and moon
Sesha wants
continue.
To
Okay.
say.
I just want to say, why does Brahma have to sleep then? I thought he was a resident of one of the top most planetary systems.
Yes, but even the Lord sleeps. So sleep, they've even done, I mean, let's get on to a scientific mode. Even in modern science now, especially with the advent of computers, science has excelled exponentially in its ability to study the minute features of what goes on, not only in our universe, but within our body. And perhaps you've seen these caps that they fit on one's head with all kinds of sensors, with all the wires going back to computers. And when a person thinks, they can see what part of the brain was activated. So they can they used to see these pictures of what part of the brain is functioning to create different emotions or different thoughts and different things in our lives. One of those things that's being studied is sleep. And they're actually understanding that during sleep, a lot of the impurities in the body and in the subtle body, in the mind, become flushed out. And that a person, they've done extensive studies, people who get enough sleep, it's part of the maintenance of the body. It's part of good maintenance to have not sleep too much, not too little, just like in Bhagavad Gita, not eat, not too much, not eat too little. So similarly, in the big body of the universe, Lord Brahma is going to sleep is necessary for him. It's necessary for the entire universe in the way that it's constructed and maintained by Vishnu. And all that is according to the time periods. That's my understanding.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that go on while the Lord sleeps and while Lord Brahma sleeps, that in the universe, in everything that they control. So it's Nidra. Excuse me?
That's clear.
Yeah. It's called Nidra. Okay, good. It's clear. What is it called? Nidra yoga. Nidra yoga.
Yoga Nidra.
Yoga Nidra. Yeah, that's like, that is a profound. And when the yoga is at the end of anything, we just read it also in a different part of Prabhupada's books. Yoga Nidra. Whenever yoga is there, it has to do with some elevating spiritual thing. So it's not an ordinary sleep the way we sleep. Chaita, did you have a question? And then Sesha, if you would read for us. Chaitanya?
Thank you. Thank you. Hare Krishna, everyone. I'm glad we're talking about sleep. And I'm going back to verse 22 in the purport explains that when Brahma is sleeping, he dreams about Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and takes instruction from the Lord.
Oh, wonderful.
That's amazing.
That is. Thank you.
And why is it that we are not privy to this kind of instructions? Because we're not sleeping enough, we're not pure enough, but he's so connected.
We're not chanting enough.
Oh.
That's why.
That's cool. Thank
Very
you.
good. Thank you. Seisha, you want to read?
Yes, thank you. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:11:30-31. The devastation takes place due to the fire emanating from the mouth of Sankarshan, and thus great sages like Bhrigu and other inhabitants of Mahaloka transport themselves to Janaloka, being distressed by the warmth of the blazing fire, which raises throughout the three worlds below. At the beginning of the devastation, all of the seas overflow, and hurricane winds blow very violently. Thus, the waves of the sea become ferocious, and in no time at all, the three worlds are full of water.
Go on.
The Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, lies down in the water on the seat of Ananta with his eyes closed, and the inhabitants of the Janaloka planets offer unto the Lord their glorious prayers with folded hands. Report by Srila Prabhupada. We should not understand the sleeping condition of the Lord to be the same as our sleep. Here the word Yoga Nidra is specifically mentioned, which indicates that the Lord's sleeping condition is also a manifestation of his internal potency. Whenever the word yoga is used, it should be understood to refer to that which is transcendental. In the transcendental stage, all activities are always present, and they are glorified by prayers of great sages like Bhrigu.
So, can you say something about this? This is confirmation. Can you say enlightenment?
I can say that it sounds like a pretty frightful experience, being in a devastated part of the universe. Violent winds and water, and my God, and then total darkness. So it's everything's silent. Wow, sounds very frightening.
It's questionable whether the living entities are in a conscious state while this is going on, because due to that devastation, the material energy is becoming destroyed. So, as was mentioned before, that the souls would enter into the body of Mahavishnu. So
the question arises, though, at just prior, like when they're on their planets and they're in their bodies, and all of a sudden that universal devastation takes place. Ooh, who can imagine? I mean, we see tsunamis and devastating forest fires, but this is the whole planet.
But another point is that because we were studying time and everything is relative, it's not all of a sudden. We see the
Right.
Kali Yuga, it looks all of a sudden for us because we're seeing things it's different than it was when we were children, and it's progressing. And this is for us on this planet, it is a gradual destructive process. So even though according to Lord Krishna and according to Brahma, it's all of a sudden, it's actually for the people in the lower planetary system, it's an evolution. It seemed that I mean, just referring back to the whole study of the atom and time.
Yes.
Is that all
Thank you.
right?
That's good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Let's go on. Let me see where we are. Anita, would you like to read?
Sure. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.11 to point 33. Thus the process of exhaustion of the duration of life exists for every one of the living beings, including Lord Brahma. One's life endures for only 100 years in terms of the times in different planets. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Every living being lives for 100 years in terms of the times in different planets for different entities. These 100 years of the life are not equal in every case. The longest duration of 100 years belongs to Brahma. But although the life of Brahma is very long, it expires in the course of time. Brahma is also afraid of his death, and thus he performs devotional service to the Lord, just to release himself from the clutches of that illusionary energy. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that's the solution. So what's the solution, Anita? Can you see that that's the solution, that Lord Brahma is setting that example for the universe?
So, like previously what we read, we were talking about the destruction of the end of the Kalpa. Now they are talking about the lifespan of the Brahma, so everything is with the time. So that's what they're saying.
But we see that what saves Lord Brahma, what he chooses to do, even though he's also afraid of his death, is he performs devotional service to Krishna. So that is the topmost solution for all of this.
The overall message of this verse is just explaining, in the universe, time is relative to each particular planet. And actually, it's relative to each particular body. Every living entity has a life of 100 years, although those 100 years are not equal in every case. It depends on where you are. So according to the piety, life is longer, and accordingly, life is shorter. But basically, everybody has a life of 100 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Anita. Chaita, you want to go on?
Yes, Mataji, thank you. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.11.34. The 100 years of Brahma's life are divided into two parts, the first half and the second half. The first half of the duration of Brahma's life is already over, and the second half is now current. Purport. The duration of 100 years in the life of Brahma has already been discussed in many places in this work, and is described in Bhagavad Gita 8:17 also. 50 years of the life of Brahma are already over, and 50 years are yet to be completed. Then for Brahma also, death is inevitable.
Come on.
Okay.
Go on, meeting.
35 through 37. In the beginning of the first half of Brahma's life, there was a millennium called Brahmakalpa, wherein Lord Brahma appeared. The birth of the Vedas was simultaneous with Brahma's birth. The millennium which followed the first Brahma millennium is known as the Padma Kalpa, because in that millennium, the universal lotus flower grew out of the navel reservoir of water of the personality of Godhead, Hari. O descendant of Bharat, the first millennium in the second half of the life of Brahma is also known as the Varaha millennium, because the personality of Godhead appeared in that millennium as the Hag incarnation.
Okay. Go. You want to go on for one more?
Just one point. Remember previously there was a question about the time on which Lord Brahma sat on his lotus flower. That was a few weeks ago. We were it said like 100 celestial years or something. This clarifies it in a little bit different way, that in the beginning, the first half of Brahma's life, that means the first half of his the first days of his life, the first day of his life was called the Brahma Kalpa, where the Vedas appeared. The millennium which followed the first Brahma millennium, I think he's talking about a day, because is known as the Padma Kalpa, because in that millennium, the universal flower grew out of the navel reservoir of the water of the personality of Godhead. So it's like days. When they talk about Brahma's millennium, it's in another sense, it's a kalpa, it's a day in which Brahma is being born.
Okay.
So I had a question. The Varaha Kalpa, that is a previous. That's a previous millennium, right? It's not current. It's not
Yes.
what's happening now, even though it's the second half. That's a previous millennium, the Varaha millennium. Is that
Oh,
correct?
that's a good question. Who knows? Patsy, you know?
No, I'd have to look up to see which day, which kalpa we're actually in, because this says the first millennium in the second half of, or the first day in the second half of Brahma's life is also known as the Varaha millennium. I know we're in the Vaivashvata Manu, but I forget which kalpa we're in.
Yeah.
Right? So I'd have to look that one up.
And also I was appreciating how Maitreya Muni suddenly brings us to the present age and tells us where we fit on the chart. I really appreciate that, because otherwise we're lost.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, so that's very hard to keep time of, even though we know where we are. But it's also important. We know we're in Kali Yuga, so we understand that the things that are happening that are horrible in the world, these are actually symptoms of Kali Yuga.
Thank you.
Did you want to read this one more?
Sure. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:11-38. The duration of the two parts of Brahma's life, as above mentioned, is calculated, here it is calculated to be equal to 1 nimesha, less than a second, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchanging and unlimited, and is the cause of all causes of the universe. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The great sage Maitreya has given a considerable description of the time of different dimensions, beginning from the atom up to the duration of the life of Brahma. And now he attempts to give some idea of the time of the unlimited personality of Godhead. He just gives a hint of his unlimited time by the standard of the life of Brahma. The entire duration of the life of Brahma is calculated to be less than a second of the Lord's time.
Talk about putting things in the proper perspective.
Haribol. Thank you.
All right. Gopa, would you like to read? Thank you. Thank you, Chaita.
Jai Gurudev.
Gopaji.
Yes. Haribo, Haribo.
Haribo.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:11, 40, 41. This phenomenal material world is expanded to a diameter of 4 billion miles as a combination of 8 material elements transformed into 16 further categories within and without as follows. The layers of elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The coverings of the universes are also constituted of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and each is 10 times thicker than the one before. The first covering of the universe is earth, and it is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. If the universe is 4 billion miles in size, then the size of the earthly covering of the universe is 4 billion times 10. The covering of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering. The covering of fire is 10 times greater than the watery covering. The covering of air is 10 times greater than that of the fire. The covering of ether is 10 times greater still than that of air, and so on. The universe within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings, and the number of universes is unknown, even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes.
Wow. So I want you to read the next one, but while we're on this one, can we go back to that for a moment? This is also a confirmation of what, Gopa? How are we supposed to think of things after reading this, and also what Chaita read about the life of Lord Brahma being less than a second for Krishna's time? How does that put things in perspective? How does this whole thing?
That everything is that Krishna is completely unlimited. I mean, he's unfathomable. Yes. Even it Prabhupada says, even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes. Yeah, and
and what about us worrying about our own minute problems and being so self-absorbed while this whole thing is going on around us?
Right. Don't sweat the little things.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Don't sweat the small stuff. And guess what? It's all small stuff.
And including us, we're small stuff.
Oh yeah,
very good.
And this whole chapter, and before, they were Prabhupada's talking about, or Krishna's dictating to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada is telling us. But don't you think he's trying to show us that we're eternal through all this crazy, amounts of time and all this? I mean, it's so unfathomable to try to realize how eternal, you know what I mean?
Wow, that's nice. That's very relieving.
Very good. Thank you.
Very nice. That's very encouraging. After all this, is very encouraging to realize that we are eternal, but we're in this material world where, in comparison to our short span of life, it is very insignificant. We're very insignificant, but on a spiritual level, we are all eternal. That's wonderful, Gopa. Thank you. Why don't you read this one too?
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:11-42. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is therefore said to be the original cause of all causes. Thus, the spiritual abode of Vishnu is eternal, without a doubt, and it is also the abode of Mahavishnu, the origin of all manifestations. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Mahavishnu, who is resting in Yoga Nidra on the causal ocean and creating innumerable universes by his breathing process, only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva for the temporary manifestation of the material worlds. He is a plenary portion of Lord Sri Krishna, and thus, although he is non-different from Lord Krishna, his formal appearance in this material world is an incarnation, is temporary.
Right. But it doesn't mean that Krishna is temporary, right?
No. Yeah.
He just is temporary, just like what other forms have we read about that are temporarily manifest, but they are Krishna as well. The Archa Vigraha, the universal form. These are temporary, but this is Krishna. That's fully Krishna, and it's withdrawn when the material world ends. You can just finish up the chapter for us, Gopa, which is and then we're going to go to the new chapter. So everyone who hasn't read is certainly going to have a nice opportunity to read. Okay, Gopa?
Okay, purport continued. The original form of the personality of Godhead is actually the Swarup, or real form, and he eternally resides in the Vaikuntha world, Vishnu Loka. The word Mahatmana is used here to indicate Mahavishnu, and his real manifestation is Lord Krishna, who is called Parama, as confirmed in Brahma Samhita. Ishvara Parama
Parama
Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govindam Sarvakarna Karnam. The Supreme Lord is Krishna, the original personality of Godhead. Notice Govinda, his form is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and he is the original cause of all causes.
Haribo.
Thus
Thank you,
ends,
Gopa.
thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, entitled Calculation of Time from the Atom.
Ooh,
Jai Prabhupada.
unbelievable. Unbelievable that we get to hear from Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah,
you.
amazing. Just nectar.
Anyone have
And I
something
find
to
it,
say? Yeah.
yeah, I was
Yes,
going
Ru-
to say it's really amazing with all the such detailed, section that Prabhupada is explaining it, and obviously the previous acharyas, the commentaries must have had that in there too. Just it's awe provoking that how intelligent and how that knowledge is revealed to them, because it's not simple knowledge; it's very complex.
This
Even the atom, even the thing about the atom. So I was very appreciative of how that knowledge is coming from the the acharyas.
So what is the original source of that knowledge, though? How it's manifest?
Yeah, it's Krishna through the heart, but
It's
still,
well, it's actually at the beginning of the universe. We just read it that Lord Brahma was manifest, and with him came the Vedas. So all of the acharyas are not concocting any of these things. This is directly from the Vedas. Granted, one has to realize it. One has to
I didn't
realize
say
it.
that it's a concocted. I just said it's
No,
very,
I'm saying,
it's what do you call it? It's provoking that.
yeah.
I mean, that's not easy to understand that
No, it's
knowledge
not.
in the Vedas, and so the fact that our acharyas have done it, and and Prabhupada has done it for us,
Yeah.
it's very amazing.
Yes.
Also, it's amazing that here in this group, this Sangha, we're getting some understanding, at least I am, of this chapter, Calculation of Time from the Atom, which is one of those traditional chapters which you just kind of go over because it's too much to understand.
Yeah, it's
I had some
amazing.
real understanding from this group's discussion. So thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Anyone else have something? Oh, I guess we're changed. Here we are on chapter 12. Let us begin this chapter. Faye, would you like to begin?
Samapriya Mataji, Bhadra Prabhu has a question.
What? Wait a minute. Oh, Vaishnavi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Bhadra Prabhu has a question.
Okay, you're
Vaishnavi, something's
coming
wrong
through.
with your audio, Vaishnavi, if you can check it. There was an echo.
Okay, thank
Bhadra?
you. Vajra.
Hare Krishna, thank you. About this Yoga Nindra. Now there are some yoga people, they have also Yoga Nindra. What is that? Someone enlighten that a little bit?
Well, from my understanding, is that they fall asleep when they're doing their yoga meditation, and somebody has to ring a bell to wake them up. That's what Prabhupada has said. I don't know anything about that. This way Prabhupada's. I follow Prabhupada. I don't know, but thank you for that. Okay. Okay. Is that okay, Bhaja? We'll just go on unless someone else has some other light to shed on that. Faye, why don't you continue for us?
Good morning, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Chapter 12, Creation of the Kumaras and Others. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.12.1. Sri Maitreya said, O learned Vidura, So far, I have explained to you the glories of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his feature of Kala. Now you can hear from me about the creation of Brahma, the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge.
Come on.
3.12.2 Brahma first created the nescient engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Before the factual creation of the living entities in different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live were created by Brahma. Unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life.
Whoa.
Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. And by forgetting one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death, although a pure living soul is deathless and birthless. This false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things, which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. All material resources are offered to the living entity for his peaceful living and for the discharge of the duties of self-realization in conditioned life. But due to false identification, the conditioned soul becomes entrapped by the sense of false ownership of the property of the Supreme Lord.
Oh boy. So what can you tell me about this, Faye? Give us a little encouragement from here.
Well, when I read this particular purport, it's a very strong one. It's very striking as to what happens when we forget who we really are. When we forget who we really are, we no longer realize that we are eternal parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. When we forget who we really are, we identify with the material covering, the body. And when we identify with the body, we forget our real nature of servanthood, and we pretend instead to be masters of things that aren't even ours, and to control others, to control circumstances. And all of those activities on our tiny being's part entangle us even more in the conditioned world.
Right. And it's also, unless a living entity forgets his real identity. Now, when you think of that line, so we are born in ignorance.
Yes.
We're ignorant. So unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible. It is impossible to live in the material world. And that's like, okay, that means this place can only be handled in total ignorance. The more ignorant you are, then the more comfortable you can be in this material world.
If you think about it for a second, let's just pick an imaginary example. If you were a gazelle, would you want to remember being hunted and eaten by a tiger? No. In a way, our forgetfulness is similar to anesthesia.
Yeah.
Without anesthesia, our
Right.
material bodies could tolerate surgery.
Right. Very good. We
Go through to the healing process that's required of the surgery. So in a way, Krishna's mercy is so profound and kind that even though we weren't paying attention and we weren't following his directives and we weren't serving him, even then, in his love and mercy for us, he provided a place for us to continue misbehaving, and he provided the circumstances in such a manner that we don't even realize how uncomfortable we truly are.
Yes.
That's the anesthesia.
Right. So we're completely drugged.
Yes.
We're in total ignorance, and we would not be able to go through this if here it is, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. So, but we at this point in this Sangha, and due to Prabhupada's mercy, devotees are waking up to realize that we are not these bodies and that we are here in ignorance in our make-believe bodies.
We read something similar last week, that when this nescience of the material world, when one devotes himself to the Lord, the same energy transforms, just like electricity can be made hot or cold. When one devotes himself to the Lord, it can become a source of knowledge, a source of a way to serve the Lord. So that's why it says, it doesn't say that the living entity can't live in the material world. It says he can't live in the material conditions of existence, because his pure devotees come here, but they don't live in the material conditions of existence. They live in the spiritual world, because everything is ultimately spirit.
Very good. So it's a matter of vision based on knowledge. Thank you. Thank you, Faye. Let's go on with Ian reading. Ian? Oh, and Anita. Wait. Okay.
I was saying, in my understanding, for the the version we were talking about, so Lord Brahma, he first created the 5 features of the ignorance. Like in the verse was saying, the tama, the darkness, and the moham, the illusionary, mahamoham, the false proprietorship, and tamishram, that is the anger, the unconsciousness. So he created the 5 features of the ignorance. Is that right? That's what my understanding on this one.
Yeah, they are. That is a good summary. This is the summary, the features of the material world.
Yes.
That's the first thing that Brahma created to help us to remain in ignorance. It's really a sad plight. But now we have knowledge and we're continuing. Thank you, Anita, for bringing that up. Ian, why don't you continue?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, so 3.12.3. Seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task, Brahma did not feel much pleasure in his activity, and therefore he purified himself by meditation on the personality of Godhead. Then he began another term of creation. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Almost all the conditioned souls who are rotting in the material world are misusing their independence, and therefore 5 kinds of nescience are imposed upon them.
What happened?
Am I hearing?
Wait a second. I don't know what's going on here.
You're doing fine, Ian. Continue.
Okay.
Oh no, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so
okay, wait, just hold on for everybody.
He's going, Sama. Why don't you mute yourself? Go ahead, Ian.
Okay, so as an obedient servant of the Lord, Brahma creates all these as a matter of necessity, but is not happy in doing so because a devotee of the Lord naturally does not like to see anyone falling down from his real position. Persons who do not care for the path of realization get full facilities from the Lord for executing their proclivities to the fullest extent, and Brahma helps in that procedure without fail. Wow.
Okay, you can continue.
Okay, 3.12.4. In the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumara. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semens flowing upwards. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Brahma created 4 principles of knowledge: Sankhya, or empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions; Yoga, or mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage; Vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to highest spiritual understanding; and Tapas, or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Brahma created the 4 great sages: Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatatan, Sanatana, and Sanat, to entrust them with these 4 principles of spiritual advancement.
So Ian,
Wow.
explain how after creating these 5 different kinds of nescience, Brahma was feeling not much pleasure, so he purified himself, and then he came up with a solution to those 5 kinds of nescience mentioned here.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit, what these 4 do for us who are in illusion.
Okay, so the Sankhya, yeah, I mean those, Sankhya, mysticism, those you want me to explain?
Yeah, a little bit of each one. How it
Okay.
helps the living entity become freed from those illusions.
Okay, so my understanding of Sankhya philosophy has to do with, we had read it, the Lord Kapila's dissertation to his mother Devahuti, when that he explained Sankhya philosophy. As a matter of fact, it says that ultimately there is 2, I think, 2 Sankhya and Bhakti. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, what is matter, what is spirit? As he said, one is long way and one is short way. Sankhya philosophy, you might not finish it because, they know what is matter, what is spirit, this question. So you may not finish that, but Bhakti Yoga is a straight path back to Godhead. Okay, yoga and mysticism for liberation of pure soul from material bondage. So people engage in different types of yoga, to get relief from material bondage. Vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life. So there was one we talk about Kaibala, is that one? There's one that it says there's a kind of happiness. We read that before.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kaibala is the one that mentioned that there's some sort of, you're away from it, but there's no sort of happiness. I know it's some sort of emptiness is there. I'm not sure if that is the one.
No. That's the impersonalist type of vairagya. This part of vairagya means to accept some sort of penances, austerities, sense control, to become freed from so-called material enjoyment.
Okay, and tapas,
yeah. Go ahead.
Or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Okay, so we understand that Brahma, for him to get, he was there wondering what to do, then he heard the word tapa. So I'm thinking that maybe, and it's, so that's how my understanding. Tapas came in voluntary austerity performed for spiritual perfection. So after Brahma went through that, then he got the realization as to how to create.
Right, and now he's actually created each one of these 4 individuals embody one of these principles.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Sama.
Yeah, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah, who's next?
Okay.
So,
Mandantara. Thank you, Ian. I'm sorry for that confusion. All of a sudden, something happened.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Mamatarji, you want to read the next slide?
Text 6 and 7. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it was me. You got to do 5 first.
Okay.
Oh,
Text
then you get to do both.
Okay, sorry. Brahma spoke to his sons after generating them. My dear sons, he said, now generate progeny. But due to their being attached to Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they aimed at liberation, and therefore they expressed their unwillingness. Purport. People may ask how the Kumaras could refuse the orders of Brahma, who was their father and above all, the creator of the universe. The reply is that one who is Vasudeva Parayanya, or seriously engaged in the devotional service of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, need not care for any other obligation. It is enjoined in the Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 5, Text 41, anyone who has completely given up all worldly relationships and has taken absolute shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, who gives us salvation and who alone is fit to be taken shelter of, is no longer a debtor or servant of anyone, including the demigods, forefathers, sages, other living entities, relatives, and members of human society. Thus, there was nothing wrong in the acts of the Kumaras when they refused their great father's request that they become family men. Text 6 and 7. On the refusal of the sons to obey the orders of their father, there was much anger generated in the mind of Brahma, which he tried to control and not express. Although he tried to curb his anger, it came out from between his eyebrows, and a child mixed blue and red was immediately generated. Purport. Although the Kumaras were right in such acts of refusal, Brahma, being absorbed in the mode of passion, could not check his passionate anger. He did not express it, however, because he knew that his sons were far enlightened in spiritual advancement, and thus he should not express his anger before them.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on with Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi, you there?
Mataji,
I
I cannot read Mataji right now. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
Vajra has a question.
Vajraji, where are you?
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Before we go further, now these 4 Kumaras, it says that they are consequently 4 Kumaras with different, we heard about the yoga and the Sankhya yoga and all that. Now the last one is, it says about the tapas for the spiritual perfection, it says. Now, but at the same time, they 4 are looking for the liberation. And of course, we know that when they went to the Vishnu, they heard, they had they smelled the tulsi at the lotus feet of the Lord, and they completely. Can you kindly explain that little bit in detail, please? Through Maharaj Prabhu.
I don't understand the question.
The question is that the 4 Kumaras are according to the 4 perfections which we read in the previous sloka.
In this verse that's up online, yeah.
Right, Sankhya. Right. And the last one is, it says that the tapa is for their spiritual perfection.
This particular part of the narration is prior to their going to Vaikuntha and seeing Vishnu.
Yeah, but the spiritual perfection is not the liberation. And one of them, Kumaras, has one of that.
Wait a minute.
Called the
No.
job or something.
You're saying no. I think he's alluding to this yoga, mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage.
Right.
Again,
the last one. See, tapas. Yeah,
voluntary,
see,
There's kinds of
voluntary
volunteer-
austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Even
Right.
They're
Brahma,
all pretty wide open. They're all pretty wide open for achieving the highest goal of human life. It hasn't been analyzed personal and impersonal yet, because this all can be applied to both schools. But all
I
of
see.
these, the yoga, tapa, sankhya, and vairagya.
Okay.
And that's what Lord Brahma created. He created that after he felt impure, because he had created all these horrible things to keep the conditioned souls within the material world. He covered them with ignorance. So then he's created the four Kumaras, who stand for everything spiritual.
and these paths, as you pointed out, they're applicable to all forms of self-realization.
Yeah,
I
it's
see.
very broad.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
and then what comes next is really interesting.
Rudras.
Yes. So Vaishnavi, oh, you can't read. Bhaja, why don't you continue then? Bhajaji.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Hare
Good.
Krishna. Text 8 to 11. After his birth, he began to cry, O destiny maker, teacher of the universe, kindly designate my name and place. The all-powerful Brahma, who was born from the lotus flower, pacified the boy with gentle words, accepting his request, and said, do not cry. I shall certainly do as you desire. That Brahma said, O chief of the demigods, you shall be called by the name Rudra by all people because you have so anxiously cried. My dear boy, I have already selected the following places for your residence: the heart, the senses, the air of life, the sky, the air, the fire, the water, the earth, the sun, the moon, and austerity.
Do you want to continue?
Yes. Purport. Bhagavad Gita 3:37. The principle of Rudra is described. Krodha, anger, is the product of kama, lust, which is the result of the mode of passion. When the lust and hankering are unsatisfied, the element of Krodha appears, which is the formidable enemy of the conditioned soul. This most sinful and inimical passion is represented as ahankara, or the false ego-centric attitude of thinking oneself to be all in all. The egocentric attitude is a manifestation of the Rudra principle in the heart, wherein Krodha is generated. This anger develops in the heart and is further manifested through various senses, like the eyes, hands, and the legs. When a man is angry, he expresses such anger with red hot eyes and sometimes makes a display of clenching his fist or kicking his legs. This exhibition of the Rudra principle is the proof of Rudra's presence in such places. When a man is angry, he breathes very rapidly, and thus Rudra is represented in the air of life or in the activities of breathing. When the sky is overcast with dense clouds and roars in anger, and when the wind blows very fiercely, the Rudra principle is manifested. And so also when the sea water is infuriated by the wind, it appears in a gloomy feature of Rudra, which is very fearful to the common man. When the fire is ablaze, we can also experience the presence of Rudra. And when there is an inundation over the earth, we can understand that this is also representation of Rudra.
Oh my goodness. And it is said that Rudra, this anger, is the foremost enemy of the conditioned soul. It's really a binding force here.
So
thank you.
is that the 11 Rudras, and those are 11 Rudras are these different functions?
Yeah, we're going to read more.
I see.
Yeah, the description of the Rudras is just now coming. All right, let's have, you know who just joined us, Guru Prasad. Would you like to read, Guru Prasad?
Haribol. Okay, I can read.
Haribol, Prabhu. Good.
Okay, purport continued. There are many earthly creatures who constantly represent the Rudra element. The snake, tiger, and lion are always representations of Rudra. Sometimes, because of the extreme heat of the sun, there are cases of heat stroke. And due to the extreme coldness created by the moon, there are cases of collapse. There are many sages empowered with the influence of austerity, and many yogis, philosophers, and renouncers who sometimes exhibit their acquired power under the influence of the Rudra principle of anger and passion. The great yogi Durvasa, under the influence of this Rudra principle, picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarisa, and a Brahmana boy exhibit the Rudra principle by cursing the great king Parikshit. When the Rudra principle is exhibited by persons who are not engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the angry person falls down from the peak of his improved position.
Oh, thank you.
Just wondering, does everybody understand the Rudra principle now? It'll go on for further descriptions. We have a few more verses, but before we go on, those examples that Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his purport make it quite clear what the Rudra principle is, which was created by Brahma's frustration that his sons wouldn't follow his order. Any questions on it? So we can go on.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we can see that this is something that we're all plagued with. Thank you, Guru Prasad. Tisha, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you, Mataji. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:12, 12 through 14. Lord Brahma said, "My dear boy Rudra, you have 11 other names. Manu, Manu, Mahinasha, Mahan, Shiva, Ritadvaja, Ugrareta, Bhava, Kala, Vamadeva, and Dritavrata. O Rudra, you also have 11 wives, called the Rudranis, and they are as follows: Di, Driti, Rasala, Uma, Niyut, Sarpi, Lal, Ambika, Iravati, Shvada, and Diksha. My dear boy, you may now accept all the names and places designated for you and your different wives. And since you are now one of the masters of the living entities, you may increase the population on a large scale."
Okay, read the next one.
Okay, 15 through 17. The most powerful Rudra, whose bodily color was blue mixed with red, created many offspring exactly resembling him in features, strength, and furious nature. The sons and grandsons generated by Rudra were unlimited in number, and when they assembled together, they attempted to devour the entire universe. When Brahma, the father of the living entities, saw this, he became afraid of the situation. Brahma told Rudra, "O best among the demigods, there is no need for you to generate living entities of this nature. They have begun to devastate everything on all sides with the fiery flames of their eyes, and they have even attacked me." Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation, the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara or Shiva, are respectively in charge. Rudra was advised not to destroy while the period of creation and maintenance was going on, but to situate himself in penance and wait for the time of dissolution when his services would be called for.
Thank you. We're just going to finish up here with Sesha. Could you finish up for us? Seshaji?
Okay, thank you. Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, 12th Chapter, 18 to 20. My dear son, you had better situate yourself in penance, which is auspicious for all living entities, and which will bring all benedictions upon you. By penance only, you will be able to create the universe as it was before. By penance only can one even approach the personality of Godhead, who is within the heart of every living entity, and at the same time beyond the reach of all senses. Sri Maitreya said, thus Rudra, having been ordered by Brahma, circumambulated his father, the master of the Vedas. Addressing him with words of assent, he entered the forest to perform austere penances. Reported by Srila Prabhupada. Brahma, disgusted with the Rudra generations and afraid of being devoured by the increase of population, asked Rudra to stop producing such an unwanted generation and to take penance for attaining the favor of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, we find in pictures that Rudra is always sitting in meditation for the attainment of the favor of the Lord. Indirectly, the sons and followers of Rudra are advised to stop the business of annihilation, following the Rudra principle, while the peaceful creation of Brahma is going on.
Oh my goodness. So we often find these deities of Lord Shiva in meditation. This was an enlightening thing for me to understand why Lord Shiva was asked to perform penance and to meditate, to free himself from this anger and purify his existence. Can you add to that, Sesha?
Well, just an overall comment about Brahma's creation, how he's being encouraged here. You did this before, so situate yourself correctly and you can do it again. Such a task that he has, that it's so difficult that at each, it's not like, well, I got this, let me do it. But every time there's danger if he goes a little bit this way or a little bit that way. So he has to keep his mind into it. Good example for us for our service. Keep our mind in our service. Not let it stray this way or that way.
Dependent on Krishna all through it.
Yes.
Right? Dependent on Krishna.
Chaita Mai had a question from.
Chaita.
Haribol, thank you. I have known many followers of Lord Shiva in my past, and my feeling is that they are pretty much interested in material acquisition because Lord Shiva is easily pleased. So he's the one that you approach when you want material prosperity. But I'm trying to figure out what's the connection between the followers of Lord Shiva and destruction. I don't think it's across the board.
Oh. I would say that there are many yogis and living entities who worship Lord Shiva, not necessarily for material opulence, but going on his very soft nature. Lord Shiva has a nature that he will accept everything that you offer, and he's very easy to satisfy the demands of people who worship him. So that's a very deep question to talk about the mood of Lord Shiva. He's very merciful.
Take advantage of that nature.
Yeah.
And they worship him for those material things. And he's the husband of the wife, Parvati, who's basically Mother Nature. So therefore, pleasing him, they get benefit from her, benedictions from her.
And also, this is not the this is like a byproduct of Lord Shiva. He is the greatest yogi. Why? Because he's meditating on Shankarshan. He's meditating on Krishna, right? I think Tisha can add to that. Tisha?
Thank you,
Who-
Mataji.
Yeah, tell us your history a little, Tisha.
Well, for me, I started, with Siddha yoga, and they're definitely Shivites, but their purpose of destruction was destruction of the ego. So that what they were trying to destroy was the false ego, the false sense of I. So that was my understanding of what destruction stood for.
And what happened when you met your husband?
I stopped. I left Siddha, and he handed me that Bhagavad Gita. I think on the first day that I met him, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, and then I just felt that stronger connection. I felt like this was my path. So yeah.
Right. Wasn't he was a yoga teacher. And then he looked at Tisha and he said, now you're changing. You're going to change. Shiva's wonderful, but now you have to move to Lord Krishna. No more worship there. Thank you. Yes, just a second. Ian had your hand was raised, and then Vajra. Ian, did you want to say something?
Yes, 2 points of view. I think there's a term which says in every endeavor there's some fault, I think.
Well,
right.
Did you get in any endeavor there'll be some fault?
There's a fault. Yeah.
Right. So you will try to do something, and you're saying that Lord Brahma is the supreme being in the universe. He had some difficulties.
I think Sesha, if I'm not mistaken, he wasn't talking about a fault. He was talking about how things weren't easy for him. It was actually in the beginning there was the tottering of the water and the lotus flower and a lack of information, and now he's starting to generate the population, and there's another problem. Am I correct, Sesha?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I understood. And the other one is you're saying that why some persons worship Lord Shiva, and remember that famous story of this guy who was pulling off his flesh to put in the fire, and Lord Shiva appeared to him and said, "Ask me for what you want." So I give you a boon, and say, "Okay, give me a boon that whoever head I touch, it would go into pieces." And then Lord Shiva realized, "Hey, I'm in trouble." And well, eventually he was rescued by Lord Krishna.
Yeah.
So
because he said, "Put your figure."
Yeah, that guy he has some mental problems. So to test it, let's see what's happening. So why don't you touch your head? So each time I read it, I'm cracking up. So yeah. So we see why so that's one of those
Yeah, and
things.
there's another part in the Bhagavatam where oh no, that was with Narada. I thought it was with Lord Shiva. Narada asked Brahma, it says that you're the most wonderful person. Who are you meditating on? He said, I'm not the most wonderful. I'm meditating on the Supreme. So also Lord Shiva is a great devotee of Krishna. Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu. Of all devotees, he is the greatest. So those who go to Lord Shiva for material things, that's one thing. But if you really worship Lord Shiva, you offer him the prasad of Krishna. That's the way to really, really please Lord Shiva. Prasadam from Krishna. That's his favorite. Bhadraji, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I know time is over, but Dhruv Maharaj Prabhu, next time, since we are on this Rudra, and Rudra will be over, can we have something, talk more about this Bhaktisiddhanta's principle, from the Brahma Samhita? Can you next time explain a little bit more in detail?
Are you talking about the yogurt?
Yes, because this is what we are, Sada
Good, that's
Siva
good.
and the Rudra and the Shiva. Can you next time in the beginning, can you kindly elaborate more in detail?
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
That's
to
a nice
recap,
thing.
we covered different time periods today in the days of Brahma, Kalpas, Manvantaras, the life of all the different stages. Then we switched over to the creation of the Kumaras and Lord Brahma asking them to create populace and them declining and taking to spiritual life, and then him becoming angry and the creation of Rudra, just to follow the steps that we're doing now as we read about Brahma populating the universe. Jai, thank you much.
Jai, thank you, everyone. This
Krishna,
is pretty
everyone.
long. Hare Krishna, Vanchakalpa,
Vanchakalpa
Tarubhyascha,
Tarubhyascha,
Kriya Evata, Sitana Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo.
Everyone have a wonderful Ram Navami.
Wonderful
Jai
one. Yes.
Ram.
Jai Ram.
Jai
Ram,
Sri.
Lakshmana Man ki jai.
Hare Krishna, thank you.